Welcome to Talk to Brazil with Tom Reaoch, the business connector to business in Brazil. Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the business connection, the world's first English language internet radio program about business in Brazil. Now in podcast format. I'm Tom Reaoch, an American in Brazil for many years and known as the King of Networking, speaker and author on networking. A professional business network is made up of people we meet every day. Our network grows and is sustained by maintaining contact with those connections. Podcasting is a modern form of networking. I'm talking from the city of Campinas in the state of São Paulo, Brazil. So when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Today's guest is Taciana Mello. She's joining us from São Paulo, Brazil. Taciana studied marketing at the ESPM School of in São Paulo, business at the California State University, and international marketing at the University of California in Berkeley. Taciana Mello is co-founder of The Girls on the Road, a project together with Fernando Moura, and The Girls on the Road focused on female entrepreneurship, which led her to visit 24 countries on the 5 continents and interview hundreds of women entrepreneurs and capture their stories, challenges, and outcomes. I recently met Taciana at a women's entrepreneurship forum in Campinas, where she and Fernanda made a presentation. The forum was promoted by ASIC Campinas, the Commercial and Industrial Association of Campinas. So with that, Taciana, hello and welcome to Talk to Brazil.
Hi, Tom. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now, for our listeners, we have our global audience. I'd like you to explain very briefly, what is this project, The Girls on the Road?
Well, yeah, The Girls on the Road started in 2016 while we were living in the U.S., pretty close to Silicon Valley. And we are, with our corporate background, we started getting involved in the entrepreneurship field. And one thing that really struck us as odd is, how many few women there were there starting companies as founders. So we started to research a little bit about it. Okay, what's going on, especially in the Silicon Valley, the most entrepreneurial place in the world and innovative, of course. And then we went to study a few reports. And one thing that there are many, of course, that impact women entrepreneurship. That one thing that really stood out for us is the fact that women say that they do not engage in entrepreneurship as much as men because they do not see other women, doing it.
No role models, huh?
Exactly, no representation, and we all know how much that matters. Mm-hmm. And that's when we started designing the whole global project to really go after these stories. To show what women are doing around the world in different business settings, in different cultures, different environments, and to show how diversified, women has been in terms of opening and building businesses. Mm-hmm. That's how the whole project is started in 2016.
So you and Fernanda, did you start this? Did you sit down and say, strategically, we want to start a project about this? Or were you just drinking some coffee there in Silicon Valley, looking out, just seeing a bunch of men and say, hey, let's do something different?
Well, we say that we kind of joke that, what started as a kind of a joke, really building to a business and then really desire to bring these stories, because we know that stories can have a huge impact and change narratives, change history. So in 3 months, when we decided to do that, let's do it. Let's, plan the whole thing. So it took us 3 months to really design the whole project in terms of, to which countries we should go, with kind of the profile of these women, everything logistically. We had this 3 months to prepare. Okay. And then on July 16th, 1st of July, we literally hit the road. Yeah.
And well, you had a route. You decided where to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, because we wanted to, as I was saying about diversification and how diversified women, has been, building business. We wanted to show really a geographical diversification as well. Mm. So of course it was so important to interview in the United States.
Right.
But it was also very important from our point of view to interview in places, in countries in Africa or in the Middle East or in Asia. I mean, you cannot talk about entrepreneurship in general if you don't talk about China, if you don't talk about India. And of course, we interviewed here in Brazil, in Cuba, that, usually we do not put in the same sentence Cuba and entrepreneurship, right? So, but we went there because we wanted to learn how women are dealing in that specific business environment and what they were doing in terms of entrepreneurship. And what did we find out?
I just want to catch you on that point. I think that's important because many times when we use the word entrepreneurship, we use innovation. In all of today's buzzwords, and you mentioned you started out in Silicon Valley. The thought is exactly that. You have to be sort of a nerd. But there are people, and there are women everywhere, and you don't have to be a nerd. You don't have to be a corporate person. You can have an idea, and you can sit down and talk with somebody, and that happens everywhere, every day.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Tom. And, that's another thing, another paradigm that we wanted to, bring some sort of light to say, okay, you can be an entrepreneur in any area, doing anything. You do not need to be a nerd. And that's very powerful to women because nowadays we have this discourse that if you do not have a tech company, if you do not have something that is absolutely related to technology, you cannot be an entrepreneur. And this is so far from the truth.
Right.
And, we interviewed women in startups, in tech startups, but we also interview women, in traditional business, let's put it that way, or in social impact business. And they all have a huge impact in their economy, in their surroundings. So that is so important to say, because this is one of the reasons that another one that women do not engage as much because, oh my God, I'm not that techie. I'm not involved in technology. I don't have the right background. So this is another thing that we really have to stop talking in terms of, okay, if you do not have a tech background or a very disruptive idea, you cannot be an entrepreneur.
Right. Well, you mentioned Cuba. I'm sure you have women who are sitting around making empanadas or worked in tourism or anything.
Exactly.
And I think that any startup, any business is a business, right?
It is.
If you can exchange your service or your ideas or a product and sustain yourself, that's a business.
And the thing, one of the things that's really interesting about women entrepreneurship, and the data shows that women, when they become entrepreneurs, when they have, this kind of economic independence, they really return to the community. They invest, they return, in the schools in terms of education, and empower other women. So it's very important to show that. And nowadays, no country in the world, and no country can really say, okay, 50% of your population will not have the same opportunities. Because economically speaking, we need more women in the economy. From Cuba to Japan, and Japan was a very interesting country because very traditional, as you might know, very formal. And women are very, very, very well educated. But once they get married, and especially when they have kids, society expects them to stay at home and to have a really limited role in terms of, okay, I'm going to take care of this family, which is a pity. And the government realized that they cannot have this situation any longer because they really need more women in the economy. Japan, as other countries, it's kind of an old country, right? Women are postponing to have kids, to start a family, because they really want to focus on their career in their business. So the whole society has really to welcome that, and the government, they start in public policies.
But what you just said, don't you feel that that's sort of the same throughout the world? That
absolutely,
many countries, many cultures, many persons feel that the role of the women or a woman is to have children, take care of the homestead, and
yes, it
not
is.
necessarily engage in economic activities. Did you find that the same everywhere?
Yes. That was one of the things that when we start off, we thought, okay, what's going to be really different in each of these countries? And at the end of the day, after 15 months on the road, we realized that the challenges that these women face, they're pretty much the same. Of course, it varies in depth, but they are all the same. And of course, what's going to make the difference is that the environment they are inserted. Mm-hmm. So, of course, in the United States, you have the same social and cultural expectations regarding, women role.
Right.
The same in Brazil, the same in Cuba. So in Japan, it's even more. In some countries in Middle East also. So there is this expectation, and society sees that women have to really to play these specific roles. And anytime you try to go out of that, there's people go against that.
Right.
So what we see right now is women saying, okay, that's enough because economically you need us.
Right.
You definitely need us. That's a major argument that we have to keep repeating.
Well, we saw that even at the forum here in Campinas. And
yeah.
I think you've seen that. I've been following what's happening in the U.S. and the world when we're talking about equal pay.
Exactly.
And I think when that was mentioned here in the forum, that received almost a standing ovation.
Yeah.
And I think that's the basis. It's whatever you do should be valued the same as whatever a man does.
Absolutely. And there's a very specific reason for that as well, Tom, because when you talk about equal pay, because women, why we don't get equal pay? Because so many hours, instead of, being able to network, for example, right. Because it's key when you want to build a business, mm-hmm. to be able to really network. Women, after work, in their business, at the end of the day, they do have to return home right. because it's expected from them to be there right. with the kids. So that's the general expectation around the world. That's
everywhere, huh? So
exactly, and that impacts directly, the pay gap, because while where the man is, networking and building hours and keep going and keep, getting more money.
So what I was saying, that's basically the history of the man goes out and hunts and the woman stays in the cave taking care of the house.
Yeah. But, women used to go hunt as well. If you look at the history of the world, women in general, we always had so many importance and different roles right. alongside men.
Right.
The narrative has changed right. to fit economic, political, war reasons. That's how the narrative changed to right. say, okay, a woman's place, it's at home. But historically, it's not exactly like that. But
now, women, one of the things I saw during the forum, not only your presentation,
yeah.
but others, one thing that was mentioned is for women to favor other women's businesses.
Yeah, I think it is
because
important.
Many times, once you don't feel you have your own business, and what I find, not only at that forum, but when I go out speaking about women's networking, many women don't feel that whatever their business is worth talking about. They don't
exactly.
present themselves as what they do or what they have or their product or their service. But generally, if they do, they want to speak to another woman. They rarely. I was at that forum, which was, let's say, 95% women, and most women would not come up and talk to me.
Which is a pity.
If I didn't go talk to the women, I would have been standing there like a statue.
Yeah, which is a pity because if you want to keep building and keep having and expanding our presence and showing our strength, we have to raise our hands. We have to speak our voices. So what you just said, it is a pity indeed. But what women say many times when they're starting a business, it's essential to interact with other women. Mm-hmm. They feel more comfortable. They want to learn from their experience. But then they have to evolve to a bigger marketplace and interact with anyone, men and women alike.
Right.
But when we, ask around the world one very specific question, say, what is the best way to support women entrepreneurship? To these women, they say, buy from these women, especially right. at the beginning, because we live in a world right now that opportunities will knock the door of men much more often mm-hmm. than at a woman's door. So we have to really, drive business to these women. So if you have two suppliers, a man and a woman, with the same product, very competitive prices, of course, and service levels. So try to buy from that woman, because at that moment it might be the thing that she needs right. to keep going. So this is very, very important, very important.
Well, that's pretty common in the United States. I've seen many organizations, many networking organizations, many companies, financing, venture capital open for women. So there is this aspect, and women know they have to help women. Like you said at the beginning, need role models. Role models are important.
Absolutely. And because you have, as I also mentioned, you have to, try to keep breaking these paradigms and these stereotypes. For example, in terms of startups, women, in general, women have a much harder time getting funded. And that's the data shows that as well. So there's no question about that.
Well, how did this come? You and Fernanda going out in the world, knocking on doors, going into different countries, and even to women saying, "Hey, we want to talk about your experiences." How were you received?
Well, from these women with open arms. Everywhere, actually. And we also interviewed men. This is important to say because from the beginning, we wanted to have a very inclusive project, of course, because we all in this together.
Right.
So we interviewed men, in the positions of mentors, of investors, of leading organizations that support entrepreneurship. So it's important to have their perspective as well because we have to work together. But there are so many things, and then I go back to the social and cultural values that still, are part of our lives that also men as investors, they have this idea of what a woman entrepreneur is and a man entrepreneur is. And we heard a very, kind of interesting but also kind of sad story in Australia. And an entrepreneur said to us, like, okay, when an investor listens to a man pitching his idea, the first thought that comes to his mind is, okay, what kind of entrepreneur he can be? Whereas when he listens to a woman, pitching her idea, the first thought that comes to his mind is, okay, can she be an entrepreneur? So that's another thing. Women in the business world, they are second guessed all the time. We have to prove ourselves much more harder and much more often than the men do, and that's also a fact, and that impacts directly your ability to raise funds.
Well, when we talk about startups and this environment, you hear very often "fail fast."
Yeah.
Does fail fast work the same for women? Because men go out and fail and say, "Well, I'm failing because I need to fail," and that's success. Do people look at women and say, "Well, she failed," so they don't give her the second chance?
Oh, that happens a lot. Because, especially when you are in the startup world, of course, when failing is part of the process of building a business. But of course, the way you approach failure is different in different parts of the world. But in general, and when you are talking about startups, you need to fail fast because you do not you cannot afford keep losing much more money.
Well, they can't afford to fail, right?
Exactly. But in terms of women, and you're absolutely right to raise this point, when a woman fails, the scrutiny, the criticism is much harder. It's much, much harder. It's like saying, you see, she cannot run a business, or she doesn't have the right abilities to run a business. That's why we do not see as many women doing that. And that's the core of our project. Is really to show, not only to say, but to show stories of women building business. Some are global business, some are local business, in the tech industry, in every industry, traditional business, social impact. It doesn't matter. They are doing. And that's the thing that we have to keep talking and showing more importantly. So we have interviewed more than 300 women.
Wow.
In the book that we released last year, it's called On Our Own Terms, we bring more than 100 stories because women with different profiles, because we want to show that. It's not because you study law, that you cannot be an entrepreneur in other area. We interviewed, for example, many lawyers, but one that comes to my mind right now is a lawyer in Israel. And she started working as a lawyer, then changed to communication, and at the end, she started her own biotech company. So you see, it's not a straight line, and we have to really reinforce this message, especially to women.
Right.
Especially to women. There are many ways to become an entrepreneur. You can reinvent yourself. You can learn from others' experiences, of course.
And get over the challenges.
Absolutely. And we also interviewed women with no formal education that are running very, very successful businesses. So there's another thing that we have to, kind of re-emphasize in terms, you do not have to be a PhD to be a successful entrepreneur.
No, you can educate yourself to failure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You can be a smart failure. That's just the way it is.
Yes.
But one at your presentation here in Campinas, one of the things you mentioned that really struck me was the case of two women, Celine Uwineza and Denise Umignana. Yeah? And you mentioned they were from Rwanda.
Exactly.
Briefly, what was it? That really made a mark on me.
Rwanda was a very special country to visit. And Rwanda, in terms of entrepreneurship, is not part of any report, which is sad, actually. Usually when we talk about Rwanda, it's to, talk about the genocide in 1994.
Right.
That mostly, decimated almost 1 million people in 90 days. At the end of these 90 days, the majority of the population was women. And they have to assume roles that they were not allowed to. They were not part of that world, but they had to do. They had to do. And Celine and Denise, they were friends as teenagers, and they are from different ethnic groups. Right. That's how the whole genocide started, of course. And Denise's family, they were able to flee the country before the genocide, but Celine stayed. And she lost many family members. And, of course, after the genocide, Denise's family returned to Kigali, to Rwanda. And after many years, they saw themselves again, and that was really powerful story because there's so much emotion behind it. And not only they reconnect, they started a business. And it's a business that basically based on reconstructing the country in terms of educating and preparing the new generation to keep rebuilding the country, because they say they are in constant and continuous reconstruction and reconciliation. So it
takes a generation to do.
Absolutely, and it's important to say how the country is started. Changed after the genocide for obvious reasons, of course, but especially the way women were seen from then on. It made a huge impact since you started to see women where usually they would not belong. Right. But, doing a great job and interacting with other men and rebuilding the country and changing the social fabric. Right. So shifting the culture. Showing, we can work together, doing different things and adding our abilities and make this country go forward. For you to have an example, Rwanda today around the world is the country with the highest participation of women in the parliament, 61%.
Wow.
It's even higher than the Scandinavian countries.
Wow.
Yes. So the country has really changed. Culturally, socially, and we have to talk about that because we can learn.
And I think that's the essence of your project, that you have shown that it can be done anywhere.
Exactly.
So it's not really nice to sit back and say, I can't do it or it can't be done. And if there's no role model, become the role model.
Exactly. Absolutely. And go looking for role models. We have to go, looking after these role models to keep talking about these women and what they are doing, how they're impacting, how their businesses, and showing, look, it is possible.
It's possible.
It is possible. There are women doing that in very extraneous circumstances, but they are doing it. They are showing us that it is possible.
Well, Taciana, I think you and Fernando have shown very well that by the girls on the road, that there is a road, and it does lead to success. But you have to take it step by step. If you don't get on the road and walk, you don't get anywhere.
Exactly. And, we heard so many interesting things, of course, along the road. Two things that we'd like to share that are really important. And so many times we asked and we heard how these women started it. And the answer is kind of pretty simple. Make the decision to start.
Just start, right? Get up and go, right?
Exactly. Make that decision and do it. Because we can have a million excuses not to do it, not to start.
Right.
But the first one must be, okay, I'm going to start.
Right.
And then do it. Then do it. And of course, the other is, talk to people. Talk to many people as possible. This is key. Share your idea. You need people to support you. You need people to criticize your idea. That's how you build a business. But you have to go out there. You have to go out there and talk to people, definitely. And ask for help. People are willing to help. But you have to ask.
I'm writing all this down very quickly. Ask for help.
Yeah.
No, I believe that. I believe that, and I've brought that on myself. That just start and do it and talk. If nobody knows what you want to do, nobody knows about it. We have to be our own marketing director.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what we did. Throughout the 15 months, we asked for help. We asked for these women confidence to share their stories with us.
Right.
That's
the other side. Is there are stories that some people don't want shared.
Absolutely. I ask for their trust, for their stories. And right now I'm asking for people to support us in another way, because we are doing a crowdfunding, because the whole project is also turning it into a documentary that will be released next March. Very good. Now, there's this crowdfunding from the Girls on the Road saying, support us, so we can bring these ideas to the world and show their voices. Because one thing is me and Fernanda talking about these cases. Another thing, it's much more powerful, of course, is seeing and listening to these women sharing these stories and their trajectories with other people.
I felt that during your presentation, what you did show to us, and that I agree with you.
Yes.
Talking is one thing, seeing is another.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly.
Well, Taciana, I want to thank you. We're coming to the end of our time, but I want to congratulate you and Fernanda on the project. I don't want to call it courage, because it's not courage. For me is stepping into a cage with a lion and holding a piece of meat. And that's not something, but having the sitting down, having the idea, and basically doing what you just said, start and talk. And that doesn't take courage, right? Just start and talk and ask for help.
Believe in yourself and do it. You can do it. You definitely can do it. You definitely can do it. Right. Do not allow others to say, this is not going to work. You can. Do not allow them to do that to you.
Well, there's about 7 billion people in the world that'll tell you it won't work, right?
Absolutely.
Or maybe
and
a little more
to keep
today.
Going. Yeah, of course. That's it.
But for our audience, repeat the name of the book and how they can find this ebook, please.
Yeah, the ebook, it's called On Our Own Terms, and is on Amazon.
Right.
Please, read it. Download it, share with others. There are so many stories, inspiring stories that, in different business settings and different backgrounds. I mean, you can find inspiration in so many different ways. And I'm sure it's a powerful tool to show what women are doing around the world and how others can really support them. That's the key. Good. So it's on our own terms. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for the opportunity.
Thank you, and congratulations again, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right. And for our audience, it's Taciana Mello. That's TacianaMello. And again, the book is On Our Own Terms, an ebook, and you'll find that on Amazon. And I would also like to invite you to visit our website, talktobrazil.com, where you'll find today's interview with Taciana Mello and links to her LinkedIn profile and also the girlsontheroad.com website. You can also find this and our previous shows of Talk to Brazil on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Himalaya, CastBox, Google Podcasts, and many others. And thank you, our audience, and remind everyone that today's program was brought to us by Focus MI Market Intelligence, and Focus MI specializes in market research for the Brazilian agricultural market. More about them on their site, focusmi.com. Goodbye, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Tom Reaoch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.